I stared at the bank statement for the third time that morning, my coffee gone cold in my hand. The number didn't change. $847,000. Nearly $1 million sitting in an account I didn't know existed, under my mother-in-law's name, with my husband's signature on every single transaction going back 7 years. My hands started shaking so badly, I almost dropped the paper on the kitchen tile. "What is this?" I whispered, even though nobody was there to hear me. That's when everything clicked into place. Every time Michael said we couldn't afford something, every excuse about why our savings account had barely grown, every late night he'd come home laughing that weird laugh, the one I'd learned to recognize but never understood. And now I understood it all too well. He'd been laughing at me. I'm Jennifer, by the way, 38 years old, married for 12 years to a man I apparently never knew at all. Let me back up. 3 years before I found that statement, Michael and I were happy, actually happy. The kind of happy where you don't question it because life feels too good to ruin with doubt. We'd bought the house in 2019, a modest 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. Nothing fancy, but ours. The HOA fees were reasonable, the neighborhood was quiet, and we had enough space to breathe. Michael worked as a regional manager at a logistics company, making solid money. I'm a pediatric nurse, and my job kept me grounded, kept me connected to something real. We were the kind of couple that had our routines down. Saturday morning farmer's market, Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Tuesday nights were ours, usually takeout and a show neither of us would admit we were binging. My mother-in-law, Linda, lived about 20 minutes away in a smaller house she'd bought after Michael's father died. She was a difficult woman, don't get me wrong. Opinionated, intrusive, always had something to say about how I kept the house or what I was wearing. But she was Michael's mother, and he loved her fiercely. He'd been an only child, and Linda had raised him alone after his dad had a heart attack when Michael was 14. That bond was unbreakable, and honestly, I respected it even when it annoyed me. Michael would visit her most Sundays before he came to my parents' house. Sometimes he'd bring her groceries. Sometimes they'd talk for hours about nothing in particular. I never questioned it. That was just Michael being Michael, dutiful, loyal, the kind of guy who remembered his mom's birthday 2 weeks in advance and already had a gift wrapped. Our sex life was fine. Not fireworks, but solid. We had our rhythm. He'd come home from work and we'd talk about our days. His coworkers, my patients, the weird neighbor who kept letting his dog poop in our yard without cleaning it up. We'd laugh about stupid things. He'd make me laugh, actually. Michael had this dry sense of humor that would hit me out of nowhere when I least expected it. I loved that about him. We were saving for a vacation. Portugal, we'd decided. We'd been planning it for almost a year, watching videos, reading blogs, picking out small towns we wanted to visit. Michael had been looking at rental villas, sending me links with little heart emojis. "This one," he'd text. "Or this one?" We were going to go in the fall. We were going to celebrate our 10th anniversary early and just disappear for 2 weeks. I remember one night, we were lying in bed, and Michael was scrolling through his phone, showing me pictures of the Douro Valley. He was so excited, talking about renting bikes, about tasting the wine, about how we'd finally do something really special. I rolled over and kissed his shoulder, and he pulled me close. He smelled like his cologne and the detergent we used. It was such an ordinary moment, but it felt perfect. "We're going to have the best time," he said into my hair. "We always do," I told him. He laughed that laugh, the normal one, not the weird one. "No, I mean it. This is going to be different. This is going to be us, just us, away from everything." I remember thinking how lucky I was, not in a desperate way, but in that quiet, confident way where you know your life is good and you're grateful for it. I had a husband who loved me. We had stability. We had plans. We had a future. That was before I found the receipt. It was a Tuesday in March, about 3 weeks before my discovery of the account. I was doing laundry, Michael's work clothes, the usual rotation. A piece of paper fell out of his jacket pocket when I was hanging it up. A receipt from Morton's Steakhouse dated 2 weeks earlier. Nothing weird about that, except the date was a Friday night. Michael had told me he was working late that night. Inventory issues, he'd said. He'd sounded tired on the phone. I stared at that receipt for a long time. 2 steaks, 2 glasses of wine, 2 desserts, 1 bill, $247. My first thought wasn't that he was cheating. I know that sounds naive, but honestly, that wasn't where my brain went. My first thought was, why did he lie about working late? And then, more quietly, why am I finding this receipt now, when he's had 2 weeks to throw it away? I didn't say anything that night. I folded the receipt and put it on the kitchen counter where he'd see it. I was giving him a chance, I guess, a chance to explain it before I asked. He came home around 6, kissed me on the cheek like always, and went upstairs to change. When he came back down, he saw the receipt. I watched his face. For just a second, less than a second, something flickered across it. Then it was gone, replaced with that easy smile. "Oh yeah," he said, picking it up. "I took a client out. Remember? I mentioned it?" "You said you were working late," I said carefully. "Yeah, working dinner, client meeting." He crumpled the receipt and tossed it into the recycling. "Sorry, should have mentioned it was at Morton's. Figured you wouldn't want me spending that much, so I just said inventory." It was a reasonable explanation. So reasonable that I felt stupid for even questioning it. And he delivered it so smoothly, so casually, that I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe him, so I did. "That's fine," I said. "Just next time let me know where you'll be." "Of course," he said, and he meant it. Or at least, he sounded like he meant it. That was the first warning sign. The thing I would replay over and over again later, thinking about how I should have pushed harder, asked more questions, trusted my gut instead of my heart. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that my husband had lied to me about a work dinner, and he'd given me an explanation that made sense. So I let it go. If I'm being honest, there were other small things before that. Michael being vague about his schedule, certain calls he'd take in the other room, the way he'd started closing his laptop when I walked past. But they were so small, so easy to rationalize, that I'd tucked them into the back of my mind where I didn't have to think about them too hard. Now, sitting at the kitchen table with that bank statement in my hands, all of those small things were suddenly very large. $847,000, 7 years of deposits, thousands of dollars every month, sometimes more, all going into an account in Linda's name, all signed off by Michael. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." I looked at my phone. Then I looked at the statement. Then I did something I'd never done before in 12 years of marriage. I called a divorce attorney. The divorce attorney's name was David Chen, and I met him 3 days later in his office downtown. I'd printed out everything, the bank statement, the receipt from Morton's, screenshots of text messages where Michael mentioned taking care of Mom's finances. David sat behind his desk, reading without expression, occasionally making notes in a leather pad. "How long have you known?" he asked finally. 72 hours, I said. My voice sounded hollow. "Have you confronted him?" "No. I'm afraid if I do, he'll move the money, or claim it's not real, or—" I stopped, realizing how insane I sounded. "He'll lie." David set down his pen. "Jennifer, this is a significant amount of money, nearly $1 million over 7 years. That's roughly $12,000 a month being funneled into an account in your mother-in-law's name. The question is, where is it coming from? Is he embezzling from his employer? Is it marital assets he's hiding?" The room tilted slightly. Marital assets. That money was half mine. Half. "What do I do?" I whispered. "First, we gather documentation. Bank statements, tax returns, anything showing his actual income versus where it's going. Second, we don't tip him off. You're going to act normal. Can you do that?" I thought about Michael coming home tonight, kissing me on the cheek, asking what I made for dinner. I thought about him lying next to me in bed while I lay awake, wondering who he actually was. "Yes," I said, "I can do that." The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I acted normal while I was dying inside. I made dinner. I laughed at his jokes. I let him touch me. Each kiss felt like a lie I was complicit in. David was building the case. He'd subpoenaed Michael's bank records, his employment file, his tax returns for the past 7 years. What we found made me physically sick. Michael's salary from the logistics company was $95,000 a year. Solid, respectable, middle-class money. But he'd been depositing roughly $12 grand a month into Linda's account, nearly $150,000 a year. The math didn't work. Unless he was taking it from somewhere else. David called me on a Thursday afternoon. "I found it," he said quietly. "He's been embezzling from his company. Small amounts, scattered across different transactions, over 7 years. Total, $847,000. Your husband has been stealing from his employer and hiding the money in his mother's account." I sat down on the kitchen floor and cried. The plan was simple. I would file for divorce and simultaneously notify Michael's employer of the embezzlement. Once the company discovered what he'd done, they'd involve law enforcement. The evidence would be locked down, the money frozen. Michael wouldn't have time to move it or hide it further. And in the divorce proceedings, that money would be considered marital assets, which meant it was mine to claim, legally. "There's one thing," David said. "When you tell him you know, he's going to panic. He might get angry. You need to be prepared for that. Do you have somewhere safe to go?" "My parents' house," I said. "Go there the moment you file the papers. Don't wait. Don't give him time to think." I filed the divorce papers on a Tuesday morning. David delivered them to Michael's office personally, making sure there was a witness. Michael's world collapsed at 10:47 a.m., according to the timestamp on the delivery confirmation. He called me at work. I didn't answer. He texted, "What the hell is this? Jennifer, call me. This is insane." I texted back, "We need to talk. I'm going to my parents' house after work. We can talk tomorrow." Then I turned off my phone. My coworker Sarah found me in the break room 20 minutes later, staring at nothing. "Jen, you okay?" "My husband is a thief," I heard myself say, "and a liar, and I'm leaving him." Sarah's face went white. She didn't ask questions. She just sat down next to me and held my hand. I drove to my parents' house that evening. My mom took one look at me and didn't say anything. She just pulled me into a hug that lasted 5 minutes. My dad came downstairs in his reading glasses, saw me, and immediately went to make tea. "Tell us," my mom said, and I did. Everything. The account, the money, the embezzlement, the attorney, the papers. My father was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "That son of a bitch." I'd never heard my father curse before. It broke something in me and I started sobbing again. The next morning, Michael's employer filed a police report. By noon, Michael had been arrested at his office and charged with embezzlement. By evening, the story had leaked to the local news. Regional manager accused of $847,000 theft, read the headline on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette website. My phone exploded with calls and texts. Friends asking if it was true, family members expressing shock, coworkers who suddenly remembered they'd always thought Michael seemed off or too smooth. But the one call I was waiting for came that evening. It was Linda. "What did you do?" she screamed into the phone. "What did you do to him?" "What did I do?" I said calmly. "Linda, your son was stealing from his company for 7 years. He was using your account to hide the money. Did you know?" There was a pause, a long one. "He said he was saving for us," she said quietly. "He said it was an investment. He said—" "He lied," I said. "He lied to you, just like he lied to me. And now he's been arrested and the money is frozen, and you're going to have to cooperate with the authorities or face charges yourself." She hung up. The divorce proceedings lasted 4 months. Michael hired an expensive attorney and tried to claim the money in Linda's account wasn't marital assets, that it was a loan, a gift, something separate from our marriage. But the evidence was irrefutable. The transfers, the timing, the embezzlement charges, the bank records showing the money came directly from his employer. In the end, I walked away with $423,500, half of the $847,000, minus legal fees and taxes. The other half went to Michael's employer as restitution. Michael was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was fired from his job. His professional licenses were suspended. His mother filed a restraining order against him because she was afraid he'd blame her for the arrest. I changed the locks on the house. I kept the house, which was paid off. I kept my job. I kept my sanity, barely. The divorce was finalized on a gray October afternoon. I signed the papers in David's office, and when it was done, he shook my hand. "You did the right thing," he said. "Did I?" I asked. "I'm 38 years old, and my marriage is destroyed, and I'm famous in Pittsburgh as that woman whose husband embezzled, and I don't even feel like I won." David nodded. "That's the part nobody tells you about winning. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like surviving." It's been 2 years now. I've been to therapy twice a week for 18 months. I've stopped jumping when my phone rings. I've stopped checking my bank statements obsessively, convinced the money will disappear. I kept the house. I paid off the mortgage completely with the settlement, and now I own it outright. The HOA fees feel like nothing compared to what I used to spend on a marriage to a man who was lying to me every single day. I went to Portugal alone last year. I rented a villa in the Douro Valley. I rode a bike through the vineyards. I drank the wine. I sat alone in a restaurant and ate the best meal of my life, and I didn't feel sad. I felt free. Michael got out of prison 8 months ago. He's living with his mother in her small house. He can't get a job in his field because of the conviction. I don't know if he thinks about me. I don't care. But I'll tell you what I learned. Trust isn't something you should give blindly. It's something you have to earn every single day through consistency and honesty, and never, ever giving someone a reason to question whether you're telling them the truth. Michael gave me plenty of reasons. I just wasn't paying attention. If you're reading this and you found a receipt your partner couldn't explain, or a bank account they won't discuss, or anything that doesn't add up, trust that feeling. Don't rationalize it away. Don't make excuses for them. Don't do what I did. Because the person you marry isn't always the person you're married to. Sometimes you have to find that out the hard way. Sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what you actually had.